tomatoes to harvest today. Not exactly red on the vine, but I'm gonna go ahead and pick them so that little critters and predators don't come along and take a bite. They'll ripen in the house. Those two big monster tomatoes that I've been keeping my eye on are finally blushing and turning. That's exciting. I wanted to give you a bird's eye view of the cucumber bed to show you how tall the plants are getting and how they're climbing to the top of the trellis. And even in this sunflower here, if you can tell, they're growing into the sunflower, using it for its own trellis. And the sunflowers still haven't bloomed. That's okay. It won't be long. Amazing, isn't it? This is interesting. This cucumber that's on top of the trellis, that's almost ready to pick, still has his little flower attached. Isn't that cute? The corn is coming right along. Continues to grow the ears. On a couple of these stalks, there are 2 ears, so that's exciting. We've got a few jalapenos that are coming right along. They'll be ready to pick in a few more days. This yellow squash plant that is in by the corn and by the green beans is still just so big. And that has a lot of blooms on it being pollinated, as you can see, so that's good. We've been getting quite a bit of yellow squash this year, but the zucchini just didn't make it. So I don't know if there's something in the yellow squash that makes it more insect resistant or what, but I'll take it. And you can see the watermelon very clearly now within the confines of these vines. You can see them from pretty far away from the garden. So I think around, I don't know, a couple weeks from now, might take a look and make sure that they are ready to pick. At least one, I hope. Keep our fingers crossed. I bet it'll be just delicious. And the really exciting thing is that these vines continue to put off new growth. So I hope that means more babies coming in this watermelon patch. The cantaloupe is continuing to grow. I think there's 3 in here now. And the vines just keep on spreading. They have intermingled in with the watermelon vines. They're good friends. So they're all growing together nicely. Kajari being supported by a hammock, just from a piece of pantyhose. And then there's one on the other side. He's touching the ground though, so he doesn't need any support. They should be ripening pretty soon. There's another Kajari down there on the ground. And more over there. A lot of Kajari on here today. Another Kajari hanging right there. Isn't that awesome? And another Kajari there on the end. The okra that I replanted are coming up. I hope there's enough time left in the season for them to produce something. I think I've decided that the mystery tomato in the front yard must be either an Abe Lincoln or a mortgage lifter, judging by the size of those tomatoes. That one right there, I'm not sure will be any good. I may have to pick him, and the tomatoes are so heavy on this plant that one of these branches broke with tomatoes on it, so I need to pick those and Hopefully they'll ripen. If not, then fried green tomatoes are in our future. Today's tomato harvest was pretty big. What I'm gonna do with some of these, I'm gonna core, score, and freeze, and I'll show you one of those when it gets ready to go into the freezer. That way you can put them in the freezer as they're being harvested. So if you don't quite have enough to do anything with, you can core them, score them, freeze them, and bring them back out when you're ready to can. When you have enough to can, either way. Some people do it just because they're inundated with tomatoes. I'm not quite inundated. I would love to be, but I'm not. So that's one thing I'm gonna do with some of these. Another thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dehydrate some of these. And I'm gonna dehydrate some jalapenos. And then I'm going to make a mix to make some dehydrated salsa, so that all you have to do is add some water to it later. Also had a small harvest of cucumbers today. I've got enough to do some pickling now, so we'll do some pickles today. I'm dehydrating my peppers this morning to go into my dehydrated salsa. I'm going to highly suggest that if you're gonna dehydrate some spicy peppers, do it outside. Because if you do it in your house, you're gonna get that hot pepper spice all in the air, and it's not good. It's not a fun time. So take my advice and dehydrate your peppers outside. Here they are inside of the dehydrator. Just jalapenos today. And it is just set on about 125 degrees, and it'll go for about 10 hours or until they're dry. I suspect they'll be dry long before 10 hours is up, but I just set it for 10 hours so I could set it and forget it. And we also need to go over the core, score, and freeze method for tomatoes. This is a quick way to get them off of your countertop. And all you do is core them at the top, score them at the bottom, and put them in a freezer bag. And then you're just gonna put them in the freezer. You can use a knife to core your tomatoes, or you can use this very handy coring tool. I use it for tomatoes and for strawberries. I'll link it below in case you want to take a look at it on Amazon and buy it if you want to. All right, these have been cored at the top using the coring tool. I'll go back over with a knife a little bit here and here to get off some of the extra stuff that doesn't need to be on there. Now I have them scored at the bottom. I simply used a paring knife and did a score cut X at the bottom of these tomatoes. The purpose for doing it this way, coring, scoring, and freezing, is that you're going to skip a step. Usually when you go to preserve tomatoes, you want to dip them in boiling water for 2 or 3 minutes, and that lets the skin come away from the tomato. When you are inundated with tomatoes and you need to catch up, you can do it this way. Or if you don't quite have enough to process, you can do it this way. Core, score, and freeze, so that when you take them back out of the freezer, the skin is also just going to slide right off. So you've skipped a step, essentially, by not having to put them in water. Really slick way to preserve your tomatoes. Then you just put them in a plastic bag, and then you're going to put this plastic bag right into the freezer. If you don't have a coring tool, or you're simply not interested in purchasing one, another way to do this to freeze your tomatoes is simply cut them in half and bag them up. Either way works great. And pretty quick, you have quite a few bags of tomatoes in your freezer to process later. You can can these, you can take off the skins and refreeze them, or you can dehydrate.